After having breakfast with his kids, Secret Service agent Xavier goes to pick up the president at his house. However, nobody answers when he knocks. Xavier opens the door anyway and is shocked to find President Cal dead on the floor. After checking the body for a pulse that isn't there, Xavier looks around for clues. There's a glass on the floor, 2 glasses of wine and earrings on the table, a blood trail that reaches outside, and a cigarette at its end. The safe has also been emptied and the cigarette package has an X on it, so he grabs it. When Agent Jane calls him to see if everything's okay, Xavier asks her to lock down and sweep the residence without asking any questions. In a flashback, Cal told Xavier that his wife voted for his opponent during the last election and admitted he was worried she'd leave him if he lost his position. Cal pointed out it wasn't a good moment for anyone to have kids but refused to explain why. In the present, Xavier asks Agent Mike to show him yesterday's security footage. Cal went through his usual routine and in the afternoon he met with Samantha, the world's richest woman whose nickname is Sinatra. Xavier remembers seeing them arguing, but when he checked, Cal told him it was fine. In the evening, Cal was visited by Nicole, the high-ranking Secret Service agent he was having an affair with. Xavier notices she was wearing the earrings he saw earlier. After she left, Cal had drinks with his father Kane, who went back to the guest house at 9:30. Cal went to bed and closed the door around 10:04, so Xavier was the last person to see him. When Mike points out that Xavier and Cal talked for a long time, Xavier remembers the day Cal was surrounded by reporters because they wanted him to comment on some incident in Colorado. Xavier noticed a man taking out a gun from a microphone and protected Cal just in time. While the other agents captured the shooter, Cal discovered the bullet caught his shoulder. Later he woke up in the hospital and Cal told him the guy had a 3D printed gun. Now Xavier shows the body to fellow agent Billy and asks him to walk the entire property to search for clues before they call anyone. Billy notices a bottle of open alcohol and 2 plates in the kitchen, plus some broken bushes in the garden. Meanwhile, Mike shows Xavier more security footage. When Billy took over the shift after Xavier left, he goofed around and even took a nap. Mike has also discovered that from 10:42 until 12:13, all security cameras were offline and frozen on the last image. In the living room, Jane wants to know what's going on and Billy tells her to stay calm since everything will be looked at from now on. He secretly gives her something before they're interrupted by Xavier, who asks Jane to make the official call and announce code red. Soon Cal's estranged wife appears outside demanding an explanation, but the agents don't let her in. However, they do allow Samantha to go inside. Kane also wants to know what happened to his son and the agents take him to another room with Samantha. Moments later, Xavier is interrogated by his higher-ups and he insists it was a normal night. Nicole wants to know what he talked to Cal about last night and Xavier remembers Cal leaving his safe open. He took a box and said he had the news of the world in his hand. Xavier acted cold toward Cal, who asked him if he'd ever forgive him for what happened. After sharing a story about his dead wife, Xavier replied that he'd forgive Cal when he could sleep again and he'd only sleep again when Cal was dead. Another flashback shows Xavier returning to work after being shot. Cal, Samantha, and General Kirtley announced that Xavier had been chosen to be one of the few people to know some top-secret national security information. The tablet in the box contained data related to a highly classified project related to the incident in Colorado. In the present, Xavier has gone for a run to clear his mind. The city is working as usual. Everyone pays for stuff with their bracelets and a man checks the robot ducks in the pond. A sign announces that dawn has been delayed by 2 hours because of scheduled maintenance. It turns out all this is happening in a domed construction where an artificial light acts as the sun. A flashback shows Kirtley telling Xavier that they were preparing for a massive catastrophe that could cause an extinction-level event for humanity and they began construction underneath a mountain in Colorado. In the present, Xavier looks at the cigarettes he took from Cal's room and finds some mysterious numbers. In another flashback from 12 years ago, Samantha put some of the brightest minds in the country on a plane. She asked architect Anders to design an underground city that could survive any disaster for 25,000 people, but he said nobody had the money to support such a huge project. Once they landed, they had bags placed over their heads so they could be transported to a secret location. Anders was shocked to find the dome under the mountain already in construction and Samantha asked him again to build a city. In the present, Xavier spends the night dreaming of being on a plane and talking to his wife before an explosion flashes outside. In the morning, Nicole picks him up and he asks for an update. They don't have a suspect or a murder weapon yet, so they must wait for the DNA results. He doesn't understand how can she be leading this investigation considering the affair, but Nicole has an alibi. Cal's tablet is missing, so very important people are upset, not to mention this is the first murder in the history of the underground city. Minutes later, Samantha meets with the most important political figures including Vice President Henry to tell them Cal died of a heart attack. As everyone freaks out, she remembers the day her son had a seizure outside a store. Samantha yells at the group to stop and explains that the community will get an alert for an emergency town hall. They'll say that the president died of natural causes and make Henry president to keep everyone calm for now. Then Xavier is taken in for an interview and lie detector test. Nicole interrogates him with the usual questions and Xavier answers everything without hesitation, even telling everyone that she had an affair with Cal. Soon Nicole is replaced by psychotherapist Gabriella, who asks him if a part of him is happy that Cal is dead as she shows her hand with "say yes" written on it. Since she used to be his and Cal's therapist, Xavier says yes. Then Gabriella informs Samantha that Xavier said the truth about the murder because if he were capable of tricking the machine he wouldn't have admitted he was kinda happy Cal was dead. Samantha thinks back to the time a doctor announced her son wouldn't make it and he tried to force her to talk to Gabriella because she was a grief specialist. At first she refused to see her, but eventually Gabriella's therapy helped her deal with her loss. In the present she tells Gabriella that she may be right before meeting with Xavier to inform him he'll be reassigned. She also asks him to take a leave of absence and ignore the case. When the town gets the alert for the town hall meeting, Xavier's daughter Presley notices that Cal's son Jeremy doesn't follow the group to leave the school. She follows him into the library to ask him why he isn't leaving, so he explains his dad is dead. He ghosted him yesterday, so their fight last week was the last time they talked. Jeremy blamed his dad for being the reason so many people were gone and admits he told him he wished he was dead. A flashback shows Samantha and Cal attending the International Financial Summit. One man talked about climate change, claiming a tsunami was going to plunge the entire eastern seaboard of the USA underwater. After the talk, Samantha asked the guy what they could do and he told her to dig the biggest hole to hide in. At the town hall, Henry reads a speech the team wrote for him to give everyone the news before taking the oath of office. After the ceremony, Xavier asks Billy if he can think of any important 6-digit codes, but Billy can't. Xavier also admits he's very suspicious of Samantha and promises to bring her down. Later in private, Xavier burns the cigarette with the code. Sometime later, Samantha and Nicole hear the results of Cal's autopsy. The wound on Cal's head indicates he was hit by a heavy object. There are signs of Cal fighting back, so they'll be analyzing the traces of DNA they found on his fingernails. After seeing the body, both women go to the bathroom to throw up. Xavier visits Gabriella to ask her about the message on her hand during the interrogation, so she tells him to go on a walk with him. Once they're far enough, Gabriella admits her office may be bugged. She says that she sat with Cal the day before his death and believes something happened because Cal seemed tired and burdened. He was drunk in her office while only wearing a bathrobe. When Xavier asks about the hand message again, Gabriella explains that if she agrees to share what she knows about Cal, she'd be taking a chance on Xavier. She wants to know more about him before taking that chance and Xavier agrees. While they walk around, Gabriella reveals she helped design the psychological aspects of the city. Then Xavier asks Gabriella if Samantha can be trusted. Gabriella refuses to answer until she learns more about Xavier's relationship with his father. A flashback shows Xavier's father Fred with a shaking hand trying to tell his son it was nothing. But since Xavier insisted, Fred admitted he had Parkinson's. He was managing the symptoms with medicine, so he hadn't told the company yet. Since Fred was a pilot, Xavier warned him he could go to jail for this and asked him to retire. Fred ignored the advice and left for his next flight. In the present, the duo goes to a diner where Gabriella's friend Maggie works. Xavier mentions that his wife was in a different city and died because he didn't get her on a plane. Then he begins talking about his dad's last flight. A flashback reveals that Xavier filled the retirement papers for Fred to force him to retire. Their relationship was damaged after that and they only saw each other during the holidays until Fred's death. In the meantime, Nicole thinks about her time with Cal, but those memories are now stained by his death. Then she informs her team about the autopsy results, ignoring Billy when he says Xavier should be there too. The murder must have happened while the cameras were down, so Mike suggests he could try to pull a digital footprint off the network. While Mike works, Jane talks to Billy in private, pointing out that a digital footprint could get them in trouble. They're interrupted by Agent Brooks, who reminds them that this part of the house is off limits. The duo hides behind a wall to kiss before going their separate ways. Moments later, they're called to an office where Nicole and Samantha are waiting. Nicole asks them why they shut down the cameras and Jane insists Billy should talk, but Billy says Nicole has no footage to prove anything. When Nicole points out that they've been shutting down the cameras at night for months, Jane finally breaks. It turns out she and Billy were very bored because nothing ever happened, so they turned off the cameras to play video games and eat Cal's food without their bosses knowing. In the evening, Xavier walks Gabriella home and asks her about the numbers from the cigarette, but she doesn't recognize them. She explains that she was in charge of choosing every single citizen for the dome and she was the one who recommended Xavier to Cal. When Xavier asks about the hand message again, Gabriella kisses him and he replies he's married, but they end up doing the dirty anyway. In the middle of it, Gabriella says she has a message from the president. Cal told her to find Xavier if something happened to him and that Billy was dangerous. Meanwhile, Billy is watching Presley from afar. A flashback shows young Billy going hunting with his uncle, who would hit him whenever he failed and taught him to never hesitate. One day the man asked Billy to shoot his dog, but instead Billy shot his uncle. Then he ended up in a juvenile facility where he had to defend himself from violent kids. When he was released, Billy was taken under the wing of a mercenary who hired him for his team. During his initiation, Billy defeated a guy much bigger than him to prove his skills. After leaving Gabriella's place, Xavier sends Billy a text saying they need to talk. When he sees a vehicle nearby, he remembers the day he arrived in the city with his kids. The guard at the checkpoint took his gun and deleted Xavier's wife from the system when he heard she didn't make the plane. Everyone was freaking out over the loss of loved ones, but Cal just passed by in his private vehicle while ignoring the worried citizens. A week later, Billy and Xavier were securing a bar for the president. The owner, Mark, said he got the job because his wife was one of the preeminent atmospheric scientists in the world. Billy had a drink, but Xavier refused because they were on duty. In the present, Xavier parks his car outside Billy's house and watches him from afar. Billy finally responds to the text saying he's already at work. Afterward, Xavier goes to the office and checks Billy's file, only to discover that a lot of information has been redacted. At that moment, Jane comes in and Xavier asks her if Billy has been behaving differently. Jane admits Billy has been distracted lately, which is strange because there's a carnival today and Billy usually loves it. Xavier remembers how 2 months after their arrival, Billy said Xavier wouldn't be sitting with him if he knew the things he had done. After Xavier is done with the file, Nicole sees him leaving the office. At the carnival, Nicole finds Billy and warns him that Xavier is on Samantha's radar before making him leave with her. Xavier has also come to the carnival with his son James, and when he sees Gabriella around, he tries to avoid her. He also notices Samantha speaking to Billy and Nicole, and they see him in return. Moments later, Billy finds Presley playing alone and offers some advice on how to tell Jeremy that she likes him. By the time night falls, James still hasn't ridden the Ferris wheel because he's scared, but he wants to. At that moment, they're approached by Gabriella, who tells Xavier about Billy's location and offers to watch over James while he looks for him. Another flashback shows Xavier and Billy telling Cal that people can't relax in this city because not knowing if there were any survivors in the outside world was haunting them. Later, during a speech, Cal announced that they'd send 4 explorers into the unknown to assess the situation. In the present, Billy warns Xavier he needs to stop snooping around because these people are dangerous. Xavier asks why he lied this morning, so Billy explains Jane was over and he didn't want him to know they're together. Then Xavier asks Billy if he killed Cal, and Billy gets offended, pointing out he's just following Xavier's kids around to protect them because they're the only thing he cares about in this place. When Xavier returns to Gabriella, he tells her it's not Billy. The next flashback reveals that Mark's wife and the rest of the exploration team died during the mission. The official story says it was the bad conditions outside, but Billy actually killed the woman when she tried to tell him there was life outside and the air was breathable. In the present, Billy goes to Samantha to rant. He was supposed to make a new life here, but she made him kill again. Samantha claims survivors outside are likely tearing each other apart for resources, so they did the hard but right thing to protect their city. Billy then asks her to leave Xavier and his family alone, but Samantha reminds him he can't give orders. She also threatens to take Jane away if he keeps up this attitude, mentioning that he's not the only killer she brought down there. Afterward, Billy visits Xavier and says that he didn't kill the president, but he's done some things that may have to do with it. He believes Samantha killed Cal and he'll share all the details about what he did tomorrow, but tonight he just wants to play with the kids. When Billy goes home, he accepts a drink from Jane only to suddenly collapse. Then Jane puts on gloves and begins planting evidence to make it look like an overdose while explaining that she's the one Samantha sent to deal with him. A new flashback shows a young Cal telling Kane that he wanted to quit the family business to become a teacher. However, Kane forbade it and forced him to go into politics. In the present, Jeremy drinks before his father's funeral. Meanwhile, Xavier finds James playing with a dog that belongs to their neighbor Carl. Xavier scolds Carl for not being careful, reminding him that pets aren't allowed in the dome. During the funeral, Jeremy talks about his father and mentions the rough state he was in during his last few days. A flashback shows that Cal had wanted to hang out with his son, but Jeremy wasn't interested. The boy had also been tired of dealing with Kane, whose dementia made him very rude and sometimes aggressive. Jeremy was upset because Cal knew what was coming but never stood up. Then he hid his guilt in alcohol. He even told his dad he wished he'd died with the rest of the world. After the funeral, Xavier asks Jane about Billy because he hasn't answered his messages, but she claims she hasn't heard from him either. Then Xavier is approached by Nicole, who reveals that the DNA samples from the crime scene never arrived at the lab. She thinks Samantha is the only one who could have meddled, but Xavier admits she won't trust Nicole because of her affair with the victim. A flashback shows Nicole telling Cal that she missed having guns around since they were forbidden in the dome. However, Cal made a comment that implied he had something. In the present, Xavier and Jane go looking for Billy. Since nobody answers the door, Xavier kicks it open and is devastated to find Billy dead on the floor. Jane puts up a show of being upset too, even when more agents arrive to take the body away. In another flashback, Cal checked the tablet and found a file called First Transmission June 23 RD, but he wasn't allowed to open it. Since Kane was asleep, Cal put his hand on the tablet and managed to open the file. It was a video of the search team saying nothing was left outside and radiation levels were very high. There was also an audio file from the group revealing that they found a woman out there and arguing about whether they should bring her back. In another audio file, Billy called Samantha to tell her the exploration team was taking the survivor to the dome, so Samantha ordered him to kill them all. Cal wrote all the important information in his notebook, then went to the library to learn to make a mixtape. After making a special CD for Jeremy, Cal visited Gabriella and told her Xavier was the only one he really trusted. He also wrote Billy's name on his hand, saying that was the person to look for if something happened to him. When he returned home, Cal started to cook for his son and sent him a message saying he was working on something that may interest him because it was never too late to fight back. When Samantha visited him later, he told her he knew what she did. He wanted to tell the Dome community the truth, but Samantha said it would ruin their lives. This caused the argument that Xavier saw. In the present, Jeremy continues to drink and tells Presley he didn't go to the special dinner. Presley comforts him and the teens almost kiss, but they're interrupted by Kane, who yells until Presley leaves. Meanwhile, Nicole informs Xavier that Billy died of a medicine overdose. The amount was too much to be recreational, so the doctor thinks Billy self-deleted. Xavier tells her that Billy tried to warn him about Samantha and they agree she must be behind this, so they should take her down. Nicole admits she knows how to get weapons for the job. A new flashback reveals that Cal was sad his son didn't go to dinner, so he invited Nicole instead. They went to his room and Nicole took off her earrings, saying she didn't want any more of his trinkets. She announced she couldn't do this anymore and tried to leave, so a desperate Cal told her he would divorce his wife soon and shared how to access the guns for them to go shooting together. This still wasn't enough for Nicole, who finally left. Afterward, Cal talked to Kane, pointing out he did all the things his father asked for, so he wanted to know if Kane was proud of him. However, Kane said that all of Cal's achievements were thanks to him. A disappointed Cal returned to his room and wrote the code on the cigarette. In the present, Xavier tells his kids about Billy's death and asks them to pack a bag. Then he asks Carl for a favor. Meanwhile, Jeremy yells at Kane for scaring Presley away. Kane doesn't remember what he did and thinks he's talking to his son. He apologizes for the other night and says he's proud of Cal. Jeremy feels bad and tells him, "I forgive you for everything, Dad." After Jeremy leaves, Kane remembers seeing Presley the night of the murder. At the same time, Presley prepares her bag and gets Cal's tablet from under her mattress. That night, Carl goes to his office and does some modifications on the fake weather computers. Xavier notices a new light post on his street and knows Samantha is using it to spy on him. At that moment, a message appears in the sky saying they're lying to you. Soon people are gathering in the streets and pointing at the words, wondering about the meaning behind them. Carl and his dog go to Mark's pub to hide, and Xavier's kids are hiding there too. However, Presley is tired of waiting and decides to leave. Samantha rushes to the fake weather office and learns they're unable to take down the words because whoever did it locked them out of the system. Then she meets with Gabriella and tells her that Xavier did this, revealing she knows about their naughty night. Gabriella is hurt that her privacy has been violated, but Samantha just forces her to talk to Xavier to get information. With no other choice, Gabriella finds Xavier at the diner and tries to convince him Samantha isn't a monster, she's just doing her best to protect the city. Meanwhile, Nicole manages to find the guns Cal told her about and takes them all with the help of her trusted agent Melvin. Then she sends Xavier a message saying Phase 1 is done, so they can move to Phase 2. After seeing this, Xavier removes his bracelet and leaves the diner. Now Samantha's whole team is looking for Xavier and his kids, who also removed their bracelets so they can't be tracked. The system reveals Nicole and Melvin used their bracelets to access certain basement area before they took them off too. Samantha realizes they have the guns and sends guards to protect her family. In the basement, the agents find a mocking note from Nicole in the empty gun box. Soon the message in the sky changes to "Do you want to know the truth?" Samantha tells Jane to find and kill Xavier, so Jane takes out the hidden gun in her house. Moments later, Xavier reunites with Nicole to handle the weapons. They also meet with a few agents they trust, including Mike and Brooks. Everyone has already removed their bracelets and Brooks tells Xavier there are men looking for him, so Xavier responds Samantha has taken the bait. He tells everyone that Samantha and her billionaire buddies are behind all this, so he's made a plan to reveal all her lies to the world. A flashback shows Xavier giving Cal a tour of the White House and explaining the protocols in case of emergency. Cal asked him to do this, so Xavier wanted to know what was happening, but Cal only said it was time for Xavier to do something about his wife. When Xavier explained his wife hadn't listened to him in years, Cal promised to pick her up. He also admitted he would be the man in charge when the world ended. In the meantime, Presley finds Jeremy in the library and tells him she's got the tablet. She explains she often went to Cal's place to play video games with Billy and found the tablet in the bushes. Presley took it because she thought it could tell her what happened to her mother, but she couldn't turn it on. Jeremy agrees to help and takes her home, unaware that Jane is tracking him. While they talk to Kane about the tablet, Presley notices his bookmark and remembers seeing the same flower design on a jacket on the night of the murder. Kane unlocks the tablet and Presley discovers that 2 thermonuclear weapons hit Atlanta. In the hangar with the planes, Xavier tells the team they won't blow anything up, they'll just make Samantha think they did. The message in the sky changes to "Who is Sinatra?" with a countdown under it. People continue to gather on the streets and count down to 0, which is the moment Xavier shoots some fireworks at the tower with Samantha and her team. A terrified Samantha asks her men to shut the system down. The city goes dark except for emergency lights and the locals panic while a computer voice tells them to go home. Samantha and her team are evacuated, and on their way out, Gabriella sees lots of angry people protesting. Soon Jeremy and Presley appear in the middle of the street to tell the crowd that the messages in the sky are true, the government has been lying to them. While Jeremy talks, Presley is approached by Jane, who convinces her to go somewhere private to talk about Billy. Xavier's group is waiting at the shelter where they're sending government officials and their families. However, Samantha's car turns around at the last second. After telling the others to secure the shelter, Xavier goes after the car. The agents sneak into the bunker and begin the takeover while Xavier continues his chase, only to find the way blocked by Gabriella. She admits she tipped off Samantha and wants the city to hold. As the power comes back, Xavier bursts into the house and finds Samantha, who admits she killed Billy but denies killing Cal. She also tells him that his wife is alive out there and she could help him find her. Xavier remembers the night before the tragedy and how he tried to convince his wife Terry not to leave for Atlanta, but she left anyway. Samantha keeps talking, explaining what really happening to the exploration team and playing some audio files that confirm there are survivors outside. When Xavier points out Terry couldn't have survived because she was near the explosion, Samantha says Cal did something he doesn't know about. A flashback shows an old news report. The host announced that a supervolcano erupted under the Antarctic ice sheet and large portions of the ice shelf were melted, which resulted in a tsunami that was moving northward at great speed. Xavier tried to text Terry but his messages weren't delivered. Henry rushed into the meeting room to announce that Russia had gone completely dark, China was moving its troops, and all coastal cities like Melbourne and Buenos Aires were already gone. The USA would lose Florida in 2 hours, so Cal had no choice but to authorize an evacuation to the dome. Xavier received a message from Terry saying she was in Atlanta because all flights were cancelled. On TV, a reporter almost got hurt when a high-pressure sound wave hit the area behind her. A second wave came and actually hit her, leaving her bleeding. When she turned around she saw the tsunami covering the city. Xavier asked Cal to help his family, so Cal promised his kids would be picked up with his son and told him to talk to Kirtley about Terry. Then Xavier asked Kirtley for this favor and was informed that Terry had an hour to reach the Air Reserve base for rescue. He checked the map and noticed Terry was too far away from that location. While Cal recorded a message of hope for all Americans, Xavier asked Mike for help finding a faster route for his wife. His texts were still not going out, but thankfully Terry called him, so he told her about the new route and to steal a car if necessary. After Cal was done with his speech, he was told that Russia and China were exchanging fire and were preparing for nuclear action. Soon an earthquake hit California, leaving it in ruins. A scientist appeared on TV explaining climate change did this, so humans were to blame. Nicole and her team tried to evacuate the president, but seeing the janitor in the hall made Cal change his mind about this speech. He wanted to tell people the truth so they could say goodbye to their families. Xavier organized the other agents to protect all the doors of the Oval Office while the president went live. Cal offered sad but sincere words when he told his country about the incoming worldwide disaster, making everyone in the room cry. After the speech was over, Cal apologized to all his employees, but they weren't happy about the lies. Xavier received a call from Terry but dropped his phone when people started to freak out. When a man tried to steal a gun from the guards, an agent had no choice but to shoot him down. As everyone stepped back in fear, Xavier picked up his phone only to find a failed call. Afterward, the Secret Service took Cal to the elevator while hearing the guards opening fire in the corridor. Xavier gave Cal his bulletproof vest before leaving the White House to rush to the helicopter. Hundreds of protesters were held back by the guards and a few men were shot down, so Xavier had to run back to pick up the briefcase with all the nuclear codes. When he was about to get on the chopper, a co-worker begged to be taken too, raising his gun as a threat. Suddenly Nicole shot the guy in the head and reminded Xavier to do his job. She stayed to hold back the protesters while the helicopter successfully took off. Once they landed, Xavier got a message from Presley saying her mom wasn't there. Xavier tried to call Terry to no avail. He wanted to do something but Cal told him it was pointless, making Xavier realize the president always knew she wasn't going to make it. An argument ensued as Xavier called Cal out for not telling him the truth earlier. When the birds appeared in the sky flying like crazy, the other agents reminded them to get moving and Xavier rushed to the plane to reunite with his kids. Minutes later the passengers were told to brace themselves because they were about to encounter high-pressure sound waves. Xavier's plane shook for a while and continued to fly on, however the other plane crashed on the ground. Cal apologized to Xavier and gave him a satellite phone to contact his wife. Then Cal was called to the office, where he learned that all the justices and Congress died in the crash. 2 nuclear devices were launched and they believed one was targeting Colorado. Kirtley revealed that their plane took some damage too, so they had to land at St. Louis. The team wanted to shoot their nuclear weapons back to protect their domes, but Cal wanted to think about it. When Samantha came to check on Cal, he shared a little secret that only the president knew. After the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 60s, a colonel had an idea to create an ultimate failsafe. It was a linked array of global EMPs and satellites that could fry every electronic circuit on Earth and disable the nukes. He could shut off the world, but it would take the planet back 500 years, which was still a better alternative than a nuclear apocalypse. Samantha warned him that those people were going to die anyway, so it would be more humane to use the normal nuclear codes, not to mention it would leave the dome without communication with the outside world too. Cal thought people deserved a chance and asked Agent Melvin to take Samantha out of his office. Xavier managed to get in touch with Terry, who wanted him to tell the kids that it was okay to be happy. At that moment Cal activated the EMP code and Xavier saw a bright explosion before the conversation ended. While Xavier thought the nukes reached Atlanta, Cal actually stopped them. In the present, Samantha finishes telling this story to Xavier and says people outside are rebuilding. They've even built some radios, so Samantha's system has picked up some of their transmissions. An audio file has Terry's voice asking about her family, so Xavier shoots the ground to threaten Samantha into telling him how to find Terry. Instead, Samantha calls Mark and passes the phone to Xavier so he can learn that Presley is gone. Then Samantha reveals that the DNA from Cal's murder didn't match anyone in the bunker, so the killer was a survivor who sneaked in. She wants her people released, her weapons returned, and Xavier to find out who really killed Cal or he'll never see his daughter again. Another flashback from 12 years ago shows the crew working hard to build the underground city. Team leader Trent noticed some of his co-workers had problems breathing and later confronted Anders about arsenic residue in the tunnels making people sick. Trent wanted to shut the project down, but Anders refused and instead sent everyone home, promising to take care of it. The next day Trent discovered he was fired and Anders would make everyone work while wearing masks. Trent wanted to know what the city was really for and Anders told him not to mess with the powerful people because they knew something big was coming. Afterward Trent started to research this incoming catastrophe, but nobody on the internet talked about it. He also kept trying to call his friends in the working team to no avail. Using a 3D printer, Trent made his own gun and it was his bullet that hurt Xavier that day. In the present, Xavier agrees to Samantha's demands and rushes to tell Nicole to cancel the operation because they still don't know who killed Cal. Henry appears on TV to tell everyone that the incident is over and everyone can relax because the system is working well, but he also admits that Cal was murdered. Jeremy is still reading the contents of the tablet in the street. Later Samantha calls Jane to discuss how to deal with Presley, who knows too much. Samantha doesn't want to hurt the girl for now, but Jane suddenly asks for Cal's video game collection and hangs up when Samantha calls her crazy. Moments later Samantha receives a message from Jane saying the problem was taken care of. Meanwhile Xavier returns to Cal's room and finds the mixtape he made for Jeremy. He plays it and finds a message from Cal saying he hid something in the library. Xavier rushes there and sees a jacket with a flower on its back. All the books have a number assigned to them and Xavier searches for the code from the cigarette until he finds a book with all of Cal's notes about the tablet. At the same time Nicole visits Gabriella to ask for the psych tests every person took when they moved in. Gabriella doesn't want to break confidentiality, but Nicole threatens her into cooperating. As they look at the list, Gabriella finds a file with a serious problem. She goes to the diner and pretends to be friendly to Maggie as usual, only for Nicole to capture her by surprise. It turns out this isn't the real Maggie and she explains Trent forced her to do this. While at the library Trent knocks Xavier out. Another flashback shows Trent in prison after the shooting. He kept trying to call his friends and one finally picked up to tell him to stop calling. Trent told him it was fate, he was in a prison so close to the construction site so he'd be close when the time came. His friend informed him he was dying before hanging up. Later when the prisoners learned about the incoming tsunami, they rioted and started to kill the cops. Trent used the opportunity to steal a police uniform and wandered down the road, where lots of cars were trying to enter the dome. He found the real Maggie and her husband, who were chosen for the bunker. Trent pretended he knew an alternate path to make them leave the car and once they were alone, he shot them both to steal their IDs. Afterward Trent changed his appearance to match the dead guy in a gas station. On his way out he found a woman crying in a parking lot and convinced her to become Maggie. When they went to the checkpoint the guard asked for the bracelet so Trent faked a panic attack. Since their pictures matched the system, they were allowed in to stop them from blocking the line. For years, Trent worked comfortably in the library, but when Cal came in asking about mixtapes, Trent knew he had to finish what he started. On the night of the murder after Xavier left, Cal went to the balcony to continue reading the tablet files. Trent surprised him from behind and knocked him out by hitting him with a relic from the library. Then he dragged the body back inside, but seeing all the blood made him doubt his actions. While Trent was dealing with an existential crisis, Cal marked his cigarette package with an X using his own blood. A terrified Trent noticed the president was still alive and hit him again, killing him for real now. In the present Trent finishes telling this story to Xavier, asking him to tell everyone who did it and why. Then Trent leaves with Cal's book and Xavier is left tied to a column. Moments later Nicole shows up and frees him, so now both can go after Trent. After lots of running they find him in the mining station, where Trent says the system made this place a prison. He calls it all a joke before jumping to self-delete. Afterward Xavier goes to tell Samantha who killed Cal and asks about Presley. Samantha apologizes, saying it was never her intention for Presley to get hurt. Xavier starts having a breakdown before he turns around and shoots all the guards in the room. Then he gets ready to kill Samantha, but she's shot first by Jane, who reveals Presley is actually just fine. After Xavier leaves, Jane explains to Samantha that she shot her in a non-lethal spot to save her from Xavier, who would have shot her in the head. She says Samantha is no use to her dead and that she has a long recovery ahead of her, pointing out this wouldn't have happened if she had let her have the Wii. Minutes later Xavier reunites with his kids, confirming that Carl and his dog are fine too. Nicole has retrieved the book from Trent's body and tells Xavier they need to get the truth out. Jeremy finally listens to the mixtape while various locals show him their support. Henry has to calm down all the politicians panicking over the loss of Samantha, and Jane plays the "We at Home." Presley tells Xavier they need to know if Terry is alive, so Nicole agrees to take care of his kids while Xavier leaves the dome to see what's out there. He finds the old planes abandoned in the hangar and easily takes off. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.